All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to the M1 ElkRP2 Beyond the Basics webinar. My name is Jonathan Jennings. On the webinar, also be doing the presenting is Brad Weeks, Head of Technical Support. Say hello, Brad.
Hi, everyone. How's everyone today?
Brad's going to be doing most of the talking. As we go through our presentation here today, we're going to be talking about tips and tricks. Maybe there's some stuff in RP2 that you don't even realize is there that you can utilize to save yourself some time and effort. To ask us questions, please feel free to type in the questions. We're going to respond to as many of those as we possibly can during the webinar. If questions do go over and we don't get to all the questions, or maybe sometimes the questions might not pertain to some of the information we're going over, we can also follow up with those questions and answers on a follow-up email that will be coming out next week. Thank everybody for taking their time to be with us. And I guess the best thing to do is to start jumping right in and to go over this. Some of the stuff that you can do with the software is we can apply templates to new accounts. We can synchronize the databases. You can organize accounts, which would be M1 systems, into folders or databases to help keep everything straight. You can set up different permissions. Maybe your technicians that you don't want them to have full access to everything, so we can kind of limit exactly what they want to do. And you can also put up more security on your database.
All right, appreciate that, Jonathan. Once again, my name's Brad. I'm in Elk Tech Support, and today we're going to be talking about some aspects of the RP2 software which you may not realize exist or may not have had an opportunity to utilize at this point. So to get started, when you first download RP to your computer, there's some templates already built into the download, and they're more or less just examples to kind of help you get started. What I generally like for customers to do is to click File and click New Account. And on the New Account screen, the first thing that you see here is the account ID. And that's basically what you want to call this account to distinguish it from any other M1 account you may have. You can use the customer's name, the central station account number. It doesn't matter. It's entirely up to you on how you want to distinguish one M1 from the other. The next option down is the system type. Now there's two platforms that we offer. We have the M1G and the M1EZ8. We've had some prior webinars where we've gone over the hardware and the software, and we've done one with some advanced rule writing. So we're not going to spend a lot of time going over that information. It's available on our YouTube channel if you'd like to review those. But basically we have two platforms, the full-blown M1G or M1 Gold, and then we call the M1EZ8 the little brother. It doesn't have quite all the same features as the M1 does. The next option down is the serial number. This is an 8-digit number. It's no two serial numbers have ever been duplicated. For the M1 Gold, the serial number will start with 0. For an M1EZ8, it'll start with 4, and it's 8 digits. The serial number for the M1G is located on the bottom of the black plastic housing, little white barcode sticker there. For the M1EZ8, it's located on one of the mounting rails on a little white barcode sticker. You can also obtain the serial number through the keypad programming. So if for some reason unable to locate it, there's a menu in programming that'll give you that information. Next item is the RP access code. By default, the RP access code is 246801. It is possible to change this code, and the purpose for the RP access code is as part of the anti-takeover feature. So this code is what would prevent someone else's computer from connecting to a system if they don't have the RP access code. So at some point you may want to consider changing it from the default. But if you do change it, it's a good idea to make a copy or a backup just so that if there's ever any major catastrophic failure to your computer or something, you still have that code in order to connect to your systems. If you lose the code or unable to connect, it is possible to factory default a panel and reset it back to the default, but there is a charge for that, and the system would have to come back to Elk in order to do that. The next item down is create a default account. Going forward, most everyone is going to use the 5.xx firmware version, which supports all of the Elk wireless receivers, our Elk M1 ElkRP2 for GE wireless, the M1 ElkRP2 for Honeywell wireless, and the Elk M1 ElkRP2 for the Elk two-way wireless product line. So whenever setting up a new default account, we'll select the 5.xx version. The only time you would ever need to use the 4.xx is if you actually had one of the GE wireless receivers, the 408E or the 416 or so forth. If you had one of these receivers connected to the board, then you would need to use the older 4 version. But going forward, everyone's going to use 5.xx, I got a feeling. It's also possible to copy from another account, so if you create a template in RP and maybe you set up the first 16 zones to always be the same, or your users for the most part have the same user authorizations, you can create a template and then copy that and rename it in order to create a new account. So this is the account detail page that opens up when we first click File and New. So I've already created an account, and we're going to open that in just a second, but I wanted to, well, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and open up my demo account here. Also looking back at File, Open Account, that's pretty self-explanatory there. If I click that, I can go back in and open any other previously created account. You can find accounts through a search. We have Save Account and Save Account As, and you might be wondering why we have both. If I click Save Account, it's going to save this account as is right now, just the way we have it programmed. But if I click Save Account As, I can change the ID, which will change this information here under Account, and I can save the serial number and telephone information here. So if I do create my template, I can keep my template and then rename it as the customer or the central station number, or however I save my accounts to distinguish them from any other account we may have. So that's the purpose for the Save and the Save As. You can print an account, so if you want to create a hard copy. The next two items are for single account information. Once I've created an account, and let's say I do this for a friend or something and I want to export it, I can export just this single account and email it or save it to a disk or a thumb drive, and then have somebody else import the account later. The way you import an account is you have to have an account open prior, and it has to be the same system type. So if I'm importing an M1G account, I have to open an M1G account prior before I can import it. So it is possible to export single accounts and import single accounts. I can close the account, and after closing the account, you see we have Open Database and Close Database. By default, when RP is downloaded to your computer, you have, let me pull it up, let's see. When RP downloads to your computer, it downloads just a single database. That database is stored under your C drive, Program Data, RP, and it's called the ElkAccounts2.mdb. ElkAccounts2.mdb. That's where all of your accounts are stored. So and it's a good idea to every once in a while make a backup of this, just in case there was some catastrophic failure to your computer or something. You would always have a backup of your accounts. Now, if you're doing a lot of M1 installs, you may want to do this more frequently, maybe once a week or something. If you only have a few accounts, you may want to do it once a month. But it's always a good idea to make a backup of your elkaccounts.mdb. That's all of the accounts that you've created. For training purposes, I've created a second database, and it's located right here, webinar. That's my second database. You don't have to create a second database, but you certainly can, in which case you'd want to make sure that you save a copy of both of them. If you're uncertain on what you need to save, you can always just make a copy of the RP folder. Save that to a thumb drive, or burn it to a disk, or save it to a new location on your existing computer, just somewhere where you have access to it, just in case you need to retrieve some information later. Also, under the RP folder is the updates folder. That's where any peripheral updates are stored. And for my system, I have quite a number of years of updates available, but that's what the updates folder is located there for, is to store the bin files for updating controls, keypads, or any other peripheral. All right, so going back to File, so if I have to, I can close and open databases. The next item under the list is called Synchronize. Now when we click Synchronize, the purpose of synchronizing is if you happen to work or own a large installation company and you have multiple users and multiple laptops, you'd probably at some point want to be able to synchronize those laptops to a master database so that everyone can have the same information for every system that's been installed. So you can set up a master database, and perhaps that's on your server, and then you can have remote databases, which are the individual laptops. So at some point, maybe in the afternoon, the technicians come in, they connect to the local area network, and they synchronize their database to the master database, so that the next technician that should happen to go out, they'll have the same programming information. Likewise, if there's a master controller, a master programmer in the office, they can have what the system has been prior programmed with. So synchronization allows for a master database and then remote databases to get synced together so that everyone has the same information. Jonathan, any questions so far?
You actually just answered the latest question. Great job, Brad.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so let's go back to our demo, M1 demo that I created earlier. And basically what we're looking at now is the account details screen, and this is for the most part a clerical screen. Anything in white is changeable so that you can add the customer's name, address, and so forth. You can also include notes on the system, date installed, the serial number is adjustable, you can enter a telephone number and so forth. Anything in the grayed out area, those get updated automatically by RP. So this is a clerical screen. It is possible to change the RP access code from this screen. There are several ways of connecting to a system. So let's go across here to Setup. First I want to talk about operators. Now once again, this is a multi-installer company, more than one installer. You can set up RP so that you can enable multiple operator access. If you're the owner of the company, obviously you'd probably want to be set up as the supervisor. So you would create your own name and password, username and password. You'd give yourself complete user authorizations to every field. You might want to set up an installer or multiple installers, and once again give them their own username and password, but there may be certain items that they should not have access to. Now, they will perhaps be able to view that but not change it. So that information is selectable under the checkboxes. In some cases you may have a homeowner that is pretty tech savvy and they want to be able to create their own rules and so forth, so you could download a copy of RP to their system, once again setting yourself up as the operator, and then creating an apprentice or supervisor for your, set up a supervisor for yourself and create an apprentice or an operator for them, assigning them certain levels of access to the programming. Also under setup is communications, and there are three means of communicating to an M1 system. We have a direct connection method, which allows for a serial-to-serial connection, standard 9-pin serial cable, or a USB to serial connection. So under Windows and Device Manager, when your cable is connected to your computer, Windows should assign a COM port number. And in my case, I know my USB serial cable is COM4. So if I right-click on COM4 and go to Properties, I want to check the port settings. I want to make sure my port settings is 115200. Data bits 8, parity none, stop bits 1, flow control none, standard options there. But the bits per second needs to be 115200, because by default the M1's onboard serial port, which we call serial port 0, is factory set at 115200. So I've set up my COM port, applied those settings, go back to RP, and under the direct connection, if we use our drop down, I can now select COM port 4 and do a direct serial connection. It's also possible to connect to the system over a modem connection, and we would recommend a external, say a 56K modem. I currently have a US Robotics 56K. So when RP connects or opens, it'll check with Windows to see what available modems are available. There's my US Robotics. I click Configure. It's letting me know that any changes only apply to RP. And for a modem connection, the port speed is 2400. A lot slower than the direct connect, but still pretty quick compared to some other panel modem connections. So make sure 2400, data protocol compression, I would leave those at default. So I click OK. And then I'm going to apply these settings. So when I go under the connection icon, I now have dial using modem and a couple other options, which right now what we're discussing is available in ElkRP version 2.0.24, which is the latest available up to this point. We will be releasing a newer version of RP in the near future to support our new C1 M1 communicator. There'll be more information available about that later on, and perhaps even a webinar announcing that once we're a little bit closer. So there are a couple options which may appear on this screen that aren't on your screen. Don't worry, those options will be available soon in the newer release of RP. The third option that we're going to talk about today is the network connection. But before I get to network, I want to go back in, make sure we've covered communication, and I think we did. We have our direct connect, we have our modem connection, so we're good there. Also under setup are options. There's several tabs here. The first one being files, and this is the default locations of the operator's database, a controls database, and the location of the updates for the peripherals like the control and keypads and so forth. So by default, these databases and locations of bin files are stored in these locations, and I would generally recommend using the default settings on your PC. Another option here is called the ElkRP log, the ElkRP log2.txt file. What this is when you connect or when you open RP, it logs that information. It logs it to this text file. And it just logs when you open and when you close an account and so forth. And at some point you may want to purge that file. So this is the location of the ElkRP log. It's different from the M1 log. This is just the RP log, and this is its location. And you can set the parameters on how big that file gets before it has to be viewed and purged. Under the Connections tab, we have two options here. One is check for conflicts when connecting. The other one is check for conflicts when disconnecting. By default, when RP is downloaded, this one is checked for you. This one is optional, when disconnecting. And what happens is when RP connects to an M1 system, it'll check for the differences between what's in your database versus what's actually programmed in the control. And it'll list those differences for you down at the bottom of the screen in a yellow box. At that point, you can select individually, or you can do them as a group to either receive them into the database, which pulls the information from the control into RP, or you can send data from RP down to the control. You can do it as a group, or you can do them individually, and you can also view which differences happen to be between the two systems. Disconnect if idle. That's so RP can't remain connected for any more than 240 minutes. Your RP access code, like I said earlier, by default is 246801. You can create your own 6-digit RP access code, and so when you're creating a new account, it'll populate that field for you. We have a database security field that allows you to set up a password for your database. So if somebody happens to copy your database, they must know the password in order to open it. So very good information there, a little bit of additional security. Also available in later versions of RP is the ability to check for updates when RP is started. So when RP is opened, it'll automatically try to connect to our website to see if there are any available firmware updates which you can download at that time. Now, just because a firmware update's available doesn't necessarily mean you have to update the system. There's release notes with each firmware update, so we would highly recommend that you read those before updating, because there may be an update that doesn't pertain to you. It may not have anything to do with your system or an enhancement or a feature that you're looking for. And as the old saying goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So if your system's working and everything is fine, then no need to update. The only exception to that may be RP. I would try to keep up to date with RP and maybe perhaps the XEP module, since it's communicating over the internet and so forth. Because, for instance, recently with the Windows 10 update, in order for RP on a Windows 10 computer to connect to a system, you have to be running the latest ElkRP, the XEP has to be running the latest XEP update in order to support that new encryption. All right, and lastly on the setup screen is the M1 Cloud, which is which has been moved to the setup window. But the M1 Cloud is it's a cloud-based service. Currently we have one partner manufacturer called Connect1 that has some enhanced capabilities for the M1 system. So if you get a chance, you can check them out. We have a link on our website that connects over to Connect 1. All right, Jonathan, just checking. Questions? Am I going too fast?
Nope, you're doing a great job.
Okay, all right. All right. Like I was discussing earlier, the third option to connecting to a system is through the local area network through the M1 ElkRP2. So we click the ElkRP2 setup. We have several tabs here, but the first thing I'd like to do is click Find. And we click Find, what RP is doing right now is searching our local area network, and it's located a number of different ElkRPs in our building. So I'm going to scroll down, and I happen to know, because I previously assigned a name to my Ethernet module, but also I've checked the MAC address, and I know this is the one that I want to connect to. I highlight, click Use Selected. For now, I'm going to close the ElkRP2 setup. And as you can see now, under my system URL, this is the local IP address for my Ethernet module. So under the connection icon, I'm going to connect via network. Now RP is connecting. That's letting me know that the firmware version is different in the control than the database. That's okay. So it at some point may have gotten updated by someone else, and I haven't connected. So now verifying system, and as you can see in the lower right hand corner, I am connected. It's modified because there was a change, because the firmware version was different. So I'm going to save that, save my account information, and now we still have our green connected but not modified. So that's how we can connect over the local area network. Let's go back into ElkRP2. Let's go have a quick overview of the TCPIP Settings tab. So I've made my connection. I've named my ElkRP2 module. I can now tell it that it's going to be a static IP at this address, subnet mask, my default gateway. I've made sure my non-secure port 2101 is enabled. My secure port is 2601. And for port forwarding, you'd want to make sure that any incoming request on the public port 2601 gets port forwarded to the private port 2601 at the IP address of the ElkRP2 module, this 192, in my case, the 192.168.100.77. So this is my local IP. So when I'm setting up RP or one of the third-party apps to connect remotely, or Elk M1 to go to connect remotely, I want to make sure I have my port forwarding set up. Under passwords, you can set up to 8 username and passwords for RP. It's just another extra layer of security. For email, the ElkRP2 module does support encrypted email from providers like Gmail and so forth. You can have up to 16 predefined email messages. So we can have an email address here with up to a 255 character long message. We can create rules to send that text message out. Real briefly about email and text messaging. If you go to our website and you search for the ElkRP2 module, first of all we have information about the Windows 10 update, which requires the ElkRP2 to be running to 2.0.34 or later. For those that have already updated to Windows 10 and your ElkRP2 module hasn't been updated yet, we do offer a special updater utility, and provided that the ElkRP2 module isn't too far back in its revisions, the updater utility could very well update it for you while still running at Windows 10. But the thing I wanted to show you is there's additional information on learning about email and text notification. So under the ElkRP, we have a recommended email service providers that have been tested. So these are AOL, Gmail, GMX, Inbox, and so forth. And using these parameters, so these have been known to work in the past as far as setting up an email provider. And go back a page. Here's an example of how to send a text message using the email feature of the ElkRP module. And here's some examples of some common carriers on how to configure the email address to send a text message to a phone. And that's all available from the Elk Products website, and if you type in the search engine M1 ElkRP, that'll link you right over. So back under the email tab for the ElkRP module, this is the outbound mail server, the port number, the valid from address from this email provider, username and password to log in, and then we can do your 16 messages. Central Station, the ElkRP module is capable of sending signals over the internet to either the SureGuard 3 or the Osborne-Hoffman internet receiver. We do support dynamic DNS providers, so if you don't have a static public IP address, you can sign up through one of a dynamic DNS provider, and we have 3 examples here that you can create a host name, and then they keep up with the public changing IP address of your router. We have a time server feature to help the M1 stay up to date. It has a built-in astronomical clock, but if you want to make sure it's within just a few milliseconds of a national non-pool time server, you can set up the time server feature to update the ElkRP or update the M1 once a day. We do have some generic audio control through Rust Sound, Proficient, and Nuvo. And then we have our M1 cloud service. So that's a brief overview of the ElkRP setup. So let me close this screen.
Hey Brad.
Yes.
Real quick right there, any examples of some NTP servers?
National time servers? What I would suggest is let's go back to, let's see, time server. We click on the link. Okay, well, let's do it the old-fashioned way. Well, all right, once you go to the National Time Server web page here, look for public time servers. You want Stratum 2, you want non-pool servers, so there's a link there to Stratum 2. And there we go. Now this list here is listed by country, so it's important to make sure that you scroll down till you find a city or state near you. So let's go way on down the list. There we go. We got to some U.S. cities now. So that's listed by country first, U.S. So just find one near you and get their IP address, and then you can enter that into the time server and click test, and it'll come back pass or fail.
Another question about setting up emails. Don't you need the DNS information before you can set up an email?
You don't need the DNS information to set up the email, but what we do need for sure is under the TCPIP Settings tab. You absolutely have to have the primary DNS server. You can contact your local ISP to get that. You can look in the routers setup table. Even sometimes the router themselves will be the primary DNS server, so it's very possible that this information under default gateway will be the same here for the primary DNS server. You can use the DOS prompt and an IP config/all and get the primary DNS server as well. But the email is not dependent on dynamic DNS. Anything else?
One question about had some XCP units that's had some failures. Any modifications to the hardware planned in the future?
Elk Engineering is looking into to new hardware and so forth, but nothing to report just yet. It's still using the same hardware, same Digi module. If they want to, perhaps send an email to tech support at Elk Products concerning the issues they've had, perhaps maybe we can address those.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay, great. All right, so let me close this for a second. And right now we also have, we've pretty much covered the setup. If we click Help, a couple items here on the Help, obviously we have the contents so that you can, great information within the contents as far as features, setting up RPs, programming and so forth. So this is a great great reference tool here. And that's under Help, Contents. Also, you can check for updates, and right now I have all the latest updates available. We can also click About, and that'll tell us what current version RP we're running. I'm currently running one just a little newer than everyone else's, but a new version is coming soon. And jumping down to the toolbar, for the most part this is all pretty self-explanatory. We kind of went over the connection. I want to look at the send receive icon. For the most part pretty self-explanatory there. You can send all, which means we're sending everything in RP down to the control. You can set the date and time from the PC. So if you're, we ship them with the date and time already set in them, but it's Eastern Standard Time. So if you get one out on the West Coast, we need to update the date and time on the PC, from the PC. You can receive all from the panel. We can check for conflicts from this screen. The Enroll Update window, what happens here is the M1's data bus, it supports many keypads, input expanders, output expanders, and so forth. And this screen shows us what is currently connected to this data bus and its current firmware version. If I were to add a new keypad, let's say I added keypad address number 6, I would have to enroll that at some point. So I would click Enroll. And the M1's telling me right now that it's enrolling the data bus. You can press the star key on the keypad, and that should stop the keypad beeping. So the information just returned just lets me know that I have my main control, which is currently at version 5.3.0. I have my keypads, and they're different part number or different models. Their current address, firmware, and boot, and everything else that's connected to my system, my wireless receiver, and my Ethernet module. Now, if for some reason I do need to update my panel, I've already downloaded the firmware update to RP, but to get the update into the panel, for instance, I would highlight the control, click Update. I know my boot version is at this, but I want to update my firmware, so I'm going to select the 5.3.8 and then click the word Update. And now RP is updating the panel. Once again, we press the star key on the keypad. That'll silence that beeping. This process, depending on the device, could take, in this case, about 2 minutes, but I think that'll probably speed up here in just a second. Or in the case of a navigator keypad, the updating process could take about 16 minutes. The navigators are a little different style keypad. They're an actual LCD touchscreen, and performing a firmware update through RP takes a little bit longer than some of the other devices. Also, when updating devices which are connected to the retrofit hub, the M1 DBHR, because the retrofit hub is basically 4 M1 data buses on one single card, there's a tremendous amount of data being transferred back and forth. So some devices just don't like updating through the retrofit hub. One device in particular is the M1 KP nav keypad. The process, I think, just because it takes so long, that it just doesn't like updating through the retrofit hub. But what you can do is temporarily disconnect it from the retrofit hub, connect it to the main control, and perform your update, and then return it to its official location. So we're going to let this finish updating. It's only going to take just a few more seconds. And while we're waiting on that, John, do we have another question?
So far, you've been doing excellent.
All right. All right, so we're at 95%, almost done. And just like that, I have now updated my control to the latest available firmware update, which is the 5.3.8. And it's now, it's disconnected because it's reinitializing. Made a modification, so I'm going to save that. There we go. All right, so that's a quick overview on how to update a bus device. We did the control. I could have done a keypad if there were one available, or the Ethernet module. Now, when updating the Ethernet module, it's once the update is complete, you need to wait the 8 to 10 minutes before trying to reconnect. It's simply a matter of letting that DigiConnect ME module reinitialize and reboot. And then after about 10 minutes, you should be able to connect with no problem. So that's my M1 system. After the firmware update, it's going through a reboot. So let me reconnect with RP now. Yes, go ahead.
I was about to say, Brad, since you're doing this, a great question came in. Says, do you have any documentation that lists out the entire instructions for updating as you're showing us? This would be great for our technicians.
That's understandable. I don't have anything in print right now, but that is certainly something that we will consider, and perhaps maybe get Amy to post that on the website. It's a great question. We appreciate that, and we'll definitely look into maybe getting something in print on the website to outline these steps. Certainly we'll look into that. All right, so now that I've reconnected, once again, RP is telling me that the firmware is different, so I click OK. And it updated the firmware version for me. The next item on the toolbar is the log. So if I click log, I can choose to receive the first 20 events, but since I've had my firmware update, it erased the log, so don't have much in there, but now I can save that to a file, I can print it, or I can clear the log entirely and start fresh. It is also possible to use M1 to go to retrieve the log. So if no one's seen M1 to go, it's a graphical user interface that runs on a PC. Except it's not going to run on my PC today with the webinar running. Okay, technical difficulty. We will come back to that later.
Alrighty, Brad, while you're doing that, here's a question for you. If you have an older control with several versions to update with sequential updates need to be installed, or do the newer updates contain the missing updates?
It's a great question. It all depends on how old the system is. There may need to be sequential updates downloaded. If they're not on the website, then you can email tech support at elkproducts.com. We'll certainly get those to you. firmware, I think the latest one on the website is 5.2.10, which goes back several years, and then the latest is the 5.3.8. If for some reason you have a really old system that has really old bootware in it, then it is possible to update. It just requires several steps in between, specifically for the boot version, to get that up to the latest before you can go to the latest firmware. So if it's not on the website, just shoot us a quick email. We'll certainly try to get that to you.
Another question here about updating. It says the log did not show any firmware updates. Is that logged somewhere else?
No, the log won't show firmware updates. The log in the M1 is reserved for the security aspects, the arming, disarming, zone troubles, system troubles, alarms. It will log when access is used, when you're using a proximity card or fob or an access code on the keypad. It will log when the system does a voice dial rule, but nothing else as far as, yes, the firmware was updated or anything like that.
Great job, Brent.
All right. All right, so now we're gonna jump down into part of the programming aspects of the M1 system, some areas that we don't touch on a lot, one of them being cutoff timers. And under cutoff timers, there are 12 locations here, 12 different cutoff timers based upon alarm conditions. Now, the first 10 are primarily the ones that we'll be dealing with, because the auxiliary 1 definition, auxiliary 2 definition by default are silent alarms. So these two really don't pertain at this time, but the first 10 will cause the siren to go off. That's output 1 and output 2. For my demo, I have them set at 22 seconds, but I can go all the way up to 65,535, which basically turns it on indefinitely until somebody disarms the system. You might be asking, why do you have so many different cutoff timers? Well, for Berg, you may have stipulations where you can only have the Berg alarm sound for so many minutes due to local ordinances or whatever. So you can set that to a different value versus the fire alarm. It's a fire alarm. You may want that to go indefinitely until somebody disarms the system. Medical duration, you may not need a siren sound for medical duration. Obviously, if it's somebody having a heart attack or something, you may not want the siren going off and causing them more stress and so forth. So in that scenario, we might want to take the cutoff timer down to 1 second, which isn't enough time for the M1's amplifier to turn on. The keypads will still beep. It'll still display medical alarm. If it's set up to send a message to central station, it will do that, but the sirens will not sound. Police duration, you may want that to be the same as the Berg duration. CO alarm, same thing. Water duration, you may not need siren sounds to start for a water alarm. I mean, that's not really something that may need a siren sound. So obviously we want to maybe set that to 1 second as also. 1 second isn't long enough for the M1's amplifier to turn on. All right, I don't know if you happen to notice that, but once I clicked off cutoff timers and went to globals, RP actually sent that information down to the control, because that's a change I made. It's still showing me my account is modified, but I didn't have to. The yellow means it's sent to the control but hasn't been saved yet. So if I save that, that should now turn white. If it were light blue, it has not been sent to the control. If it's purple, it's not saved or sent to the control. I believe under the help and contents it'll explain those different color parameters when changing information. But when I clicked from cutoff timers to globals, it sent that change down to the system for me, or I could click send to control and it just sent them all as well. All right, moving forward, I want to take a minute to look into globals. For the most part, this screen is fairly self-explanatory. I want to jump over here real quick to G6 through G10, which is fast and slow loop response. That's just the amount of time that the zone has to be in a violated state before the M1 will respond. For the most part, you'll always use the slow loop response, which will be by default is 400 seconds, 400 milliseconds, sorry. Fast loop response, the only time we really use fast loop response is when we're using our ELK M1 ZTS, our zone temperature sensor. You want to be careful when using fast loop response, because if you have a zone that's maybe perhaps on the edge of being secure or not secure, any slight variation in the zone status could cause a false alarm, could cause a false trigger if the loop response is set too quick. The cross zone verified, it is possible to set up zones in what we call the cross zone pool, which means you can have a pool, one pool with multiple zones in the pool, that if one of those zones and another zone in the pool get tripped, that causes a valid alarm. The verify time is the amount of time that the two zones have to trip. They have to trip within that time period for it to be a valid alarm. If self-verified is checked, it means that that single zone can trip twice within that time period and it causes a valid alarm. Now, this is maybe a good application for a warehouse where you have multiple PIRs, but you also may have I don't know, birds or raccoons or something that may get into your warehouse or into an outside area, and you want to make sure that at least two sensors get tripped in a certain amount of time to prevent those false alarms. Now you notice I made the change, and the change turned purple. That means it's not saved or sent to the control. So if I send that change, it turns yellow, which means it hasn't been saved. So now if I save it, everything turns white, and I still have connected, and see, no modified, so everything is saved. Another area which we don't talk about a lot is the common area. Now, the M1 can be divided into 8 separate areas or partitions. And let's say, for instance, we have an office area with a common entry, and then once you get through the entry, each area has its own entry door. There's a common vestibule. You can set the M1 system up so that area 1 can be common to any other area. And the purpose for that would be area 1, or the common area, cannot be armed until area, in this case, area 2, 3, and 4 are armed. Once these areas are armed, then the common area can be armed. If any one of these areas become disarmed, say there's a back door into area 4, and they come in the back door and disarm area 4, area 1 automatically disarms. So that's common area. It's not a commonly used feature, but it is a feature available in the M1 for a multi-area partitioning system. All right, as we know, the M1 system has a lot of voice capabilities built into it. It has a 500-word vocabulary. Each zone, regardless if it's on the main board or an input expander or a wireless zone, can have a 6-word phrase associated with the zone. And there are certain times when you may not want certain voice messages spoken. For instance, when you press the chime button on the M1 system, don't know if you could hear that. Let me try again. Okay, so she's speaking. Every time I press the chime button, she's speaking. So I may not want that. So I uncheck Enable Chime Messages, send that to the control. And now when I press the chime, didn't give it enough time to try one more time. So I still get the tone, but no voice that the chime has changed status. So that's a feature there under the G19 through G25 tabs that allows you to control certain messages and when they're spoken. The G14 through G18 tab allows you to adjust that voice message volume for certain events, like output 1 volume upon initial alarm. May not want that as loud as when the system is in the final alarm status, as likewise when it's just telling you that the front door is open, that may not need to be as loud as when the system's telling you that there's been a burglar alarm. So there's some adjustments for the spoken voice for the M1 system, both for non-alarm and when it goes into alarm. Okay, Jonathan, how are we doing?
You're doing great, Brad. So far,
Okay.
you've answered all the questions as we've been moving forward.
I certainly do appreciate that. Okay. All right. Now, we've covered rule writing in the past. We've had an advanced webinar on rule writing, so I won't get too much into that unless somebody has something in particular. There is maybe just a couple rule examples that we could. Oh, there is one area I do want to touch on, something that we haven't spent a lot of time on, that custom settings. And under the custom settings tab, we have 20 custom setting values. And the purpose for having the custom setting values is once you've created your rule and you've sent this information down to the control and you've disconnected RP from the system, in order to change parameters in the system, you'd have to reconnect with RP. If you set the value to a custom setting can be adjusted through the keypad. So if you set up a sprinkler on time and the time of day of 5:15, like I have here for custom setting 1, once you leave and the system's set up and running, that may work fine for the first couple weeks, but then later on the end user, the customer, may say, 5:15 is too early, I need it to be 6:15. Well, custom setting can be adjusted into keypad. So the homeowner could actually go through the menu and adjust the custom setting for himself without having to reconnect with RP. And then I've had some other ones set for some values like the setback heat, setback cool, and so forth. And like I said, you can have 20 of those, and these are just values that can be adjusted through the keypad menu versus having to reconnect back with ElkRP. If you do get an opportunity to view our advanced webinar, on advanced rule writing, I think most of these were covered at that point under that particular webinar. A lot of good examples on how to use counters as flags, how to send custom messages to keypads, and so forth. So and how to use phantom outputs as timers. So a lot of good information in that webinar available for download at any time. At this moment, unless we have some specific questions, that's exactly what I wanted to go over today, and I certainly hope there was some good information there for everyone. Jonathan, how are we set on questions now?
I'll probably just give some people a few minutes to see if they have any questions out there.
Okay.
You did go over way more information I thought you were going to go over, Brad, so I was glad to see that.
Well, thank you. And as always, if somebody has a topic, if you want to email us at elkproducts.com, if you have something that we haven't covered in some webinars, that if there's something there that you would like to see, we'll certainly take that into consideration. And wait just a few more minutes. I certainly do appreciate everyone's time and attendance today. I know it's taking time out of your busy schedule, and we certainly do appreciate that. Hopefully you got some yes.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you there, Brad. I was trying really hard not to. Back to the database, which is good since that was closer to the beginning of the webinar. It might not be fresh in our minds. Can the database be saved on a network to share and opened by multiple computers on the network?
That's part of the synchronization. So yes, that is possible to have the database on a local or a server, and then everyone connect to the same database. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we don't want to rush anyone. If we have more questions, we'll certainly take a few more minutes to try to answer those.
How do you join multiple databases together?
Multiple data. It's the one database which is being shared with the synchronization process. The synchronization analyzes both databases, will let you know which one, that there are differences. How do you want to resolve it? Do you want to receive from this one to that one, or do you want to send from that one to this one? It's part of the synchronization feature.
Order of updating firmware on all devices, including attached devices, so that we do not lose connection to the attached devices.
Well, once again, updating is on an as-needed basis. So and always read the release notes beforehand. If it doesn't pertain to you, or something in the update's not something that's relevant to your system, then I wouldn't recommend updating. But I would say update the control. I'd make sure RP was up to date first. Then I'd update probably the control, and then the peripherals after that. But there's no real set parameter. You have to up this first and that first to make it happen. But I would make sure I had the latest ElkRP.
Does the network communicator use the RS-232 port to connect to the M1G?
Yes, the XEP module plugs into the M1's onboard serial port, and then the XEP plugs into your local area network. So you're actually running, your computer connects to the local area network, and then you use the XEP's find feature to locate it, find the address, select it, and then connect to it.
An account name after created, can it be changed? It is grayed out.
Click File and Save As, and you can change the name. Make sure you check mark the save serial number, telephone number, and URL. That little checkbox right under that. But click File and Save As.
That's been a great bunch of questions right here towards the end.
Yeah, now that will give you two accounts in your database, so you may want to go back and delete the other one, depending. That's entirely up to you.
It seems to be that's all the questions, Brad.
All right. Well, once again, everyone, we certainly do appreciate your time today. Thank you, Jonathan, for monitoring all the questions. We certainly do appreciate that, and there'll be a follow-up email on this webinar next week. If there's nothing else, like I said, once again, certainly do appreciate everyone's time and attendance. And if you have any questions, that's techsupport@elkproducts.com, and we look forward to the next webinar.
Hey, Brad, one last question before you go. I used the RS-232 port for a LAN control system, so what then would be our choices for remote access for the M1?
All right, well, a LAN, if they haven't created local area network drivers, when a device connects to the M1 on the M1 serial port, then that device pretty much has priority until it's disconnected. So in order to connect to RP, you would have to disconnect the LAN. Something you might want to consider, I've suggested this in the past but haven't gotten feedback on how well it's worked. Elk offers a device called the the ElkRP2 It's a serial to Ethernet bridge. So it takes the serial port from a device, say a LAN, and allows it to connect to the local area network. And in that case, the XEP module would connect to the M1's serial port, and you should be able to set them up to communicate back and forth, but once again, I've not gotten feedback from the field to know how well that works. So I know Alon and others, they have serial drivers, and that's all they're doing right now. So until they get a LAN driver, then you'd have to disconnect them in order to plug RP in.
It's funny because you said that and somebody wrote back, I used that and it works great. So there's a little bit of feedback for you on that.
Great, thank you. That is good to know. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
And can the M1G use the IP232?
You can, but it's limited. I mean, it's basically just for local area network connection. There's no email capability. There's no port forwarding capability. You can for just connecting RP.
Would you be using the IP232 for the Alon control of the M1 to get updates from the M1?
Yeah, the M1, well, the M1 would send the data out through the XEP, and then the IP232 picks up the data and transfers it to Alon.
This has spurred a ton more questions. What about using the serial expander for lighting control? That depends on which lighting control partner, depends on which serial expander you actually need. Please go to our partner webpage on elkproducts.com to tell you which actually partner that you need, which part you need for that particular lighting partner.
Right.
Will the M1C1 connect via serial port as well?
We're going to hang on to that until the C1 M1 is actually released. So that's coming soon. So there'll be more information available soon on C1 M1.
And the guy that made it work, Alon IP232 M1G on board serial. I guess the guy's looking for whoever made that work. If he could give us some more information, we'd be happy to pass that along to you.
Absolutely, please. Yes, if he wants to send it in, we'll maybe do a little tech note or something.
Well, that's it from all of us. Thanks everyone for attending. Brad, you did a wonderful job as always.
Thank you, Jonathan. Everyone have a great weekend, and thank you for attending. We look forward to the next webinar.
All right.